Hey, what's up, everybody, and welcome back to another awesome, exciting new episode of Paranormal Axetivities. And today's episode is brought to you by Naked Nutrition. Naked Nutrition provides you with pure protein powders and supplements to help you meet your nutrition and fitness goals. Naked Nutrition is completely transparent about their ingredients. That way you know exactly what is going into your body. No additives means your body gets more of what it needs, and I highly suggest checking out the grass-fed whey protein powder. I've become a huge fan of grass-fed foods, meats, and all of that kind of stuff. And the grass-fed whey protein powder comes from dairy that is from grass-fed only cows. So definitely check that out. And right now you can get 10% off your first purchase at nakednutrition.com by using the code POD. That's 10% off using the code POD, P-O-D, for first-time customers. Take your nutrition to the next level with Naked Nutrition. All right, guys, like I said, Paranormal Axetivities is new this week. We are just out of Thanksgiving. I hope you all had a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving day, night, weekend, whatever it may have been. I did take the week off last week after Thanksgiving. We were tired from hosting, and it was just a long weekend. But here I am back. And just real quick, let me get all of this out of the way before we get into the show here. I have a returning guest, Russell, from the Coffee Breath Conversations podcast, joining me in just a few minutes. But before that, there are two new things I have to tell you all guys all about. One is Paranormal Axetivities now has a Patreon page, and you can find the link below in this episode description. And you can also visit all my social medias and see it. But what Patreon is, guys, is basically it's just another way to support the podcast for just $5 a month. You have access to paranormal investigations I've been a part of. I have 2 audios on there right now, one of which has a ghost spirit box session. I have the interview that will be on the show next week, actually. So you have early access to some interviews and shows I'll have on there. And just, as I go on, I'll be uploading new stuff on there all the time. So check that out for just $5 a month. And I also have new merch available in the description below of this episode as well. So check all of that out. And I also have on there my Thanksgiving Paranormal Axetivities. So you will also have early access to Paranormal Axetivities on the Patreon page. And my activities, I mean the actual events that have happened. So all that's out of the way. Let's get right into the show, which leads into my first segment, my favorite segment of every show, the Paranormal Axetivity of the Week. And I have 2. One is more exciting than the other, but they both happen to happen on the day of Thanksgiving. So let's get right into that. So Thanksgiving morning rolled around, and like I mentioned, Danae and I hosted. This is the second year in a row that we've hosted, and just like my life, I did not have everything that I needed the day of, so I had to go to Kroger. And Danae was like, I don't want to go to Kroger, but I was like, well, I need you to come with me. And she was like, no. And I was like, yeah. So she decided, or I nagged her anyway enough to go to Kroger with me. And, the car that I drive, it's a 2017 vehicle, so I always have my Bluetooth hooked up to it on my phone. So when I drive to and from work, I'm listening to podcasts or music of my choice, whatever. So whenever I get in the car, it automatically syncs up. I just leave the Bluetooth on all the time. And like you guys probably know or don't know, I'm sure you all mostly know, that when you get a text message, unless you have it on Do Not Disturb, it pops up on the screen with the person the text message is from and all of that stuff. And it was interesting because we got in the car, and Kroger is literally like 5 minutes from our house. And as we were driving, we were in the car for maybe 2 minutes, right outside our house. And I get a text on my phone, and the screen pops up, but it's not from the person that I was texting, or texted me, I should say. The name that popped up was my wife's mother, who suddenly passed away 3 years ago. And it was like, what? Like, that coincidence is crazy. And I will say that happens sometimes. More, happens probably not daily, but it does happen enough that the wrong name will pop up when I get a text in that car for whatever reason. But generally, it's a name of somebody I recently texted or texted 3 times ago or whatever. It's a current name of somebody I still actively talk to in my phone. And now that being said, Danae's mother is still in my phone. I never deleted it, but obviously we haven't texted in over 3 years. So that was crazy. The first thing that we see when she gets in the car, kind of grumpy about having to go into Kroger with me on Thanksgiving Day, is boom, text message from her mother's name. That was wild. And that timing is crazy. It hasn't happened before that, hasn't happened since that, and I drive this car an hour and a half a day at least. So, and my phone's always connected to it. So that timing you can't even make up if you wanted to. So that was definitely an interesting thing. And then another thing right after that was, we got our stuff. That put her in a better mood. She was a lot happier after that, actually. And we get home, and a few hours later, my parents arrive. And literally, as soon as my mom walks in, now my mom walks into the house. As soon as she does that, the calendar on our door falls off the table, or falls off the door. And it's never, or it's done that one time before, has it fallen off the door. And again, that time, and as soon as my mom walks in, our calendar falls off. Could be a sign, could be a coincidence. You do what you want with that one. But the timing, again, is just unreal. So those are my 2 Thanksgiving edition Paranormal Axetivities of the week. And yeah, that car was pretty nuts, I thought. But all right, let's get right into the show here. So again, as I mentioned, Russell, who has been on the show in the past, he used to work in a prison. We talked about some of the spirits he's seen in the prison. I highly recommend go back and listen to the first time around. I can't remember the episode number, but I'm pretty sure his name's in the description. And he, again, is from the Coffee Breath Conversations. So one disclaimer I have to say real quick before we get into it. This is a little bit different. We don't really talk about the paranormal per se, but we're going to talk about the Christian group, the Last Reformation. And he has a family member that's part of it. And we kind of talk about that, and maybe is it a cult, that kind of stuff. So it's not necessarily paranormal, but he came to me about it, and I thought it was really interesting. And Danae is really into the cult scene, and I don't like seeing people get preyed upon and that kind of stuff. So I said, why not? So this episode, at least the rest of this episode, not really paranormal when it comes to spirits and ghosts, but it's paranormal in the fact that it's not normal behavior. And he's going to tell us some reasons why that is. So just a quick disclaimer. And so let's welcome him back to the show for the second time, Mr. Russell from Coffee Breath Conversations. How you doing today, brother?
It's going pretty good. How's it going with you, Ben?
Oh, I'm doing super well. Hey, man, I appreciate you coming back to the show to take the time and talk about a new, interesting topic today.
Yeah, it's definitely a different topic. I mean, last time it was kind of spooky, paranormal stuff. This one's, well, I'll leave it up to people to judge what it is based on what it is, but it's a real life story, a real lived experience, and it's certainly a strange one, that's for sure.
Yep, absolutely. And that's kind of why I decided to go ahead and do this with you. So we're going to be talking about the Last Reformation Christian group, I guess we should call it today. I'm not really sure what the actual term is or what they call themselves, but it's called the Last Reformation. It's not really paranormal, but it's definitely interesting and definitely something I'm interested in. So I said, hey, why not? You have personal encounters with this group, so why not talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, this group, I've done a little bit of research on them after I encountered them. I encountered them through a family member who's involved with this group, which is their choice, and it's no reflection on them, although I am concerned for them based on how I've seen this group operate. But it's their freedom of religion, it's their freedom of choice, who they want to associate with. So if it makes them happy, who am I to judge?
That's a very good point. That's one thing I do want to mention before we get going here. I am definitely not against any kind of religion. I grew up in a church. I believe in God. So this is not a slam, no matter what is said here or not said here today, to the religious folk, as I'm not religious these days. But again, no judgment on my part. Whatever makes anybody happy, do you. All right, so let's get into it, man. So it is called the Last Reformation. So what is the Last Reformation?
So Last Reformation, from what I understand, it looks like it's an offshoot of Christianity. It looks like it's an alternate form of Christianity. It was started by a guy named Torben in, he's Danish. I think that's, I'm not sure which country exactly that's from, but, and he self-proclaims that he's a modern day apostle and that the Last Reformation is going to basically deliver people into the true Jesus and Holy Spirit and that sort of thing, that the other churches have sort of fallen off the wayside and they're not following the actual teachings. But this group here is going to return people back to the proper teachings. That's kind of what I gather. I have a couple of things just briefly. I got them pulled up on my computer screen here. It's basically this group. Now, from what I understand, he's actually not operating in his home country anymore, from what I understand.
Okay.
From what I understand, he got himself in some trouble and now is operating out of the United States, and they call their base of operations the Ark, which that's an interesting term all in itself. Interesting connotations to that term. And frankly, it reminds me a lot about Scientology. It really does. They have these courses. They call them Kickstarter courses, and that's supposed to kind of kickstart new members into this group. They're very active on the internet. They do have I will say they do have a very, very good video campaign. Their publications are top notch. Their websites are top notch. So they have all the looks of what looks like a legitimate religion, and in their eyes, they are a legitimate religion. So, and again, I'm not here to judge on that.
Yep, absolutely. And you brought up Scientology. When I looked into these guys after we talked about it the first time, I agree 100%. Everything looked very Scientologist to me, from their websites, from how they talk to you, from how they word things. I've watched some Scientology things and kind of read about them, and it is very Scientology-like. And with this group's Last Reformation, they debuted, I believe, in 2011. And so it seems like, it is a new day thing. And obviously the computer and websites are a big way to get people, in this time period. So definitely Scientology-like.
Yeah, it's not amateur hour for them when it comes to the internet. And what that means is it's very hard to find criticism of them on the internet. From what I understand, from what I've seen, they engage in very aggressive takedowns of criticism. I can pull up some threads on Reddit that are kind of old, and people saying, stay away from these people. They're crazy. They get you in there and then you can't get out. And then there's people that, one post, 1 day old accounts are on there and they're saying, no, they're great. And so they definitely have a very good media division. I wouldn't be surprised if this episode doesn't get flagged or anything like that, because they're very, very good at that sort of stuff.
That's fair. And that's where the word cult comes into play, I think, at least in a big way, because I know religion, and I know religion gets a lot of criticism, and the legit churches, like the church that I grew up in, the church that my sister goes to now, and all the churches around here, they don't care. If they get criticized, oh well, and they move on. So I feel like once a church organization starts going after people, that's when the word cult has to get thrown around. Does that sound correct?
It sounds correct. What I would like to add to that too is the church revolves around a central figurehead. So while the Christian church revolves around a pope or kind of a high level clergy that operates more like a CFO, CEO sort of role, this person is the person that's looked up to, the person that is actively communicating with everyone. I think that's where there's a distinct separation with this one. This is the go-to person. They're the ones that are going to set the rules and set how things are. There's no democratic process. They're the person. Very Jonestown-like, very some of the other cults that kind of seen over the years where there's one central leader and they kind of call the shots.
Yep, absolutely. And I would definitely agree that's a cult. It's just like with Scientology. I'm not good with people's names. And the new one, Nexum, with that guy who just actually got arrested and I think prosecuted, and had the actors from the show Smallville. That turned out to be a modern day cult, and it had the same kind of internal structure. So what would make this not a cult by definition? You know what I mean?
Well, what's interesting too is they've taken a few musicians and kind of B-list celebrities, and they do their baptisms, because according to this group, they don't believe that the Catholic baptism is an official baptism. It's not real. So they train all of their members on how to do baptisms, exorcisms. I'm not joking, exorcisms. And all members are disciples in this group.
What makes them, again, they just came out in 2011. What gives them the say or the power to take on the Catholic Church and say that their baptisms aren't correct, but the 2011 version is? Like, where do they get the audacity to even say that?
Well, I'm not too sure. I'm not that involved. And frankly, I want to keep a bit of an arm's distance away from them because I don't want to get too involved in that world.
Right.
Because I think once you start getting involved in that world, it's very hard to detach yourself from it, even if you want nothing to do with it.
That's a fair point. And I'm interested to see how they do exorcisms, being paranormal activities. I absolutely believe in demons and things of that nature. So I want to know what they do differently compared to other other groups as well.
Well, I'm about to tell a story that's going to blow your fucking socks off. Then.
All right, that's what I'm waiting to hear. So you said that you have a relative in the Last Reformation. So let's hear about that a little bit. Like, what have you seen?
Okay, so I went to visit a family who lives in a different city than I do. And over the last couple of years, this family member, and I want to preface this family member, they're a good person. They go to work. They're a very logical person. They have a university degree. They work in a technical field that requires logic. There's no, I think it's like mechanic or electrician or something like that. So they're in a field where it's not left up to mystery. It's all logical processing. Now, this family member had grown up in the church. However, in the last few years that I had known prior to this, had sort of not been as involved. They remarried, and this person started going to a more open-ended church. So when I went down to visit one time, we went to this church, and like it was different than what I knew growing up. Like, the pews were nice and comfortable, unlike the Catholic Church. If you had to get down on your knees, it was nice and comfortable. It wasn't hurting your knees, feeling the sin leave through your knees and all that sort of stuff,
Perfect.
It's a bit of a joke in that, but, and it was, I thought it was interesting. It was a lot more community based. They had like a rock band on stage, like a Christian rock band, and the pastor wore like a jersey instead of like the typical collar, and that kind of felt more community based. I was like, okay, hey, if this what makes this person happy, hey, good for them.
Absolutely.
I went once because I haven't seen this person in a long time, and I'm pretty close to them, so I thought, that I would have preferred to go to the bar and shoot pool or drink beer or whatever, but this is what they want to do. Hey, I'll go. I'm open to all sorts of new experiences and ideas and that. So I went there and I said, hey, that's cool. Won't go again, whatever. Then I came visit them again later on. And I asked, oh, how's your church thing going? Oh, well, we're not involved with that church anymore. They don't take things seriously enough. I was like, okay. Yeah, we're involved in a different group now. And I'd love for you to come meet them. And I said, okay, whatever. I'll come by. I'll see this group. See what's happening. Now, again, this person, like I said, used to go to the bar, drink some beer, shoot pool, shoot the shit, typical sort of thing.
Right.
Now he wants to sit at home and watch Christian-based programming and listen to Christian-based radio. And hey, whatever. So he was watching this Christian-based program, and it was all about this Last Reformation. So I was looking at it, and they had someone from some band that was popular in the 90s. They had like a one-hit wonder, and they were redoing this person's baptism. And I was kind of looking, and like the production quality is phenomenal. I will give them credit. Their production quality is absolutely top-notch. Like,
I believe that. I mean, that's what they're going to do. It's all about the showmanship.
Yeah, most Christian movies and all that, it's like a form of torture to have to watch any of that, like Veggie Tales or anything like that. Like, it is just, and they're mocked for a certain reason. The production quality isn't there, the acting isn't there. It's kind of ridiculous,
right?
The notion a lot of the times, but So the production quality, this is pretty good. So he says, oh, we're going to go meet this group. So we pile into vehicle. We drive there. We're in a nice neighborhood. I'm talking really nice neighborhood. And we show up, and this is like, we're at a really nice house. I'm sorry, my dog is barking in the background.
No problem at all. We're a family animal friendly podcast here at Paranormal Axetivities.
All right, so show up, like I said, nice house, nice people. We met this family there. They're nice. There's some other parts of this group that were there, and they seemed like nice people, like typical upper middle class sort of neighborhood sort of people based on dress, appearance, all working professionals. So we all sit down in the living room, and the one benefit I will say to showing up to this place was that this get together, they served alcohol. So at least I could have a beer and that. So I was drinking a beer, and I'm just planning on sitting there and just kind of watching what happens and, supporting this family member and that, they're inviting me out. This is a social activity for them. So they start and they're talking about Bible verses and stuff like that. And kind of typical stuff I would have thought from kind of like a Bible study group or whatever. And things started to go off the tracks about halfway through. They started asking me questions, which I knew was going to happen because, of course, the part of law religion's converting people and that. And
absolutely.
And I just kind of shot back and I said, look, I'm not interested. My own beliefs are my own. And, they're talking about the baptism that I had when I was a child wasn't actually legitimate. And I didn't question it too much. Maybe I should have at the time. And I just said, well, how do you do your baptisms? Well, we can go fill up like a pool right now and we could do it right now. And I said, no, I'm good. Because it doesn't need to be done at a church or anywhere, sacred, because they're all disciples. Right. Anyone can do it. They can make holy water. They can do whatever they need to do to make things work. Right.
That's fair. Real quick. They tried to baptize you that night.
They would have if I would have said yes. I highly believe that they would have found a way to do it.
All right. Fair enough.
And this is going to play in a little bit later on in the story where things are going to start to take a weird turn.
Okay.
So everything is going okay. And I'm thinking, okay, this is your typical kind of Bible study group, a little bit smaller. They're a little bit weirder, but hey, whatever. I listen to JP Sears, talk, everything's all good. So then they say, well, we're going to pray over this lady. I said, okay. So they phoned her up. She got cancer. Feel bad for her. Terrible. Cancer's terrible. And she's in pain. So they talk to her for a bit and they say, well, no, we're going to help cure you of your cancer. So immediately red flag.
Absolutely.
Okay? And I believe, that, the power of the mind can help people and that. Sure. So they all gather around this phone, which is on speaker on the table. And you got to imagine this. There's a group of people. There's a lady sitting next to me. There's my family member. There's his wife there. There's this pastor that's sitting there, and they're all kind of sitting there, and they all got their hands reached out towards this phone because apparently they're going to send energy through the phone, which is going to travel to the cell tower, to the other person's phone, through the phone, and attack their cancer, apparently. But that's another story, I guess. I don't know.
That's a very complicated way to do it, but hey.
And so I'm sitting there and I'm expecting they're going to, rail off a couple Our Fathers or whatever else. And no, this pastor gets up and literally starts screaming into the phone, "Cancer, you will leave this woman's body immediately." Screaming at the phone. "Foul demon, leave this woman's body," interloper. And he's screaming at the phone. I'm like, holy fuck. What the fuck is this shit?
Right.
I kid you not. He starts yelling at the phone. Everyone starts chanting, like fucking chanting, like, biblical stuff. And the fucking bitch next to me starts screaming in tongues. She legit breaks into fucking tongues. And I'm sipping my beer like, holy fuck, what the fuck is this shit? So they're screaming. This pastor guy's screaming. Everyone's chanting. People are talking in fucking tongues. And I'm just looking at this family member and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
What's he doing at this point? Is he also screaming and talking in tongues, or?
He was quiet. Okay. He wasn't saying anything, but he was chanting to himself and not as excited and elevated as these other people. And yeah, they're yelling and screaming. And I'm just thinking like, what the hell is going on here? Like, there's no way this is something you see in movies. This is something that you hear about, I guess, but you never like this. I couldn't believe it. It blew my mind. Like, these are upper middle class people that are, I'm assuming, all in professional or semi-professional sort of occupations that require logic and thinking.
Right.
They quite often say religion is the opiate for the masses. And so they kind of finish their little yelling and screaming thing. And then they're talking to her for a bit. And now none of these people are doctors, as far as I know. And they're telling this woman that she should maybe look at getting vitamin C shots and things like that. And I'm thinking like, okay, well, you're not fucking doctors here. Like, you did your energy chanting sort of weird tongue lashing sort of thing. And now you're telling this woman to go get vitamin C shots.
Yeah, that's one thing that's just not, I hate seeing that as well. It drives me fucking crazy when you have these batshit people with nonsense beliefs, not even nonsense beliefs, but just people that don't believe in modern medicine. I don't understand. And I'm sure, you know what I mean? Like, you can't just say stupid shit like that. Oh yeah, you have cancer? Vitamin C will do it. What are you talking about? That makes no sense.
So the story gets weirder and you think, how the hell could it get weirder than this, right? You've seen the typical screaming evangelical style pastor. You got people speaking in tongues, people shaking like they're having seizures. Like, how could it get any weirder than this, right?
That's pretty weird so far.
Yeah, it is. And it's uncomfortable. It's highly uncomfortable. I am not comfortable at all there. Like, most cases, like, I'm one of those people, if I truly don't like what I'm hearing, I'll get up mid conversation and I'll just leave. Like, I don't feel the need, if there's no value, to just sitting around and listening to something that's providing no value to me whatsoever. Like, I am confident enough in myself that I'll get up mid conversation and walk away from someone.
Absolutely.
And so, but because this family member, I sat there and they're trying to tell me that they believe in the original core tenets and the original beliefs, and people, they're trying to explain this to me. People used to, because they could tell I was shocked. I was wide eyed, like, what the fuck did I just witness?
All right.
And so the rest of the evening is just them trying to convert me now to their group. And I just keep saying, thanks, but no thanks. Again, any other situation, I would have got up and walked out. I would have just walked right out of that clown show and, hey, not my circus, not my monkeys.
Right.
But I stayed and I listened. And afterwards I was concerned talking to this family member. I just said, what do they expect from you? And tell me a little bit more about this, because now I want to know a little bit more, because now I'm worried, because the one thing that a lot of these groups do is they have what's called a tithe. And a tithe is a very fancy way of saying a religious tax. That's a tax you pay specifically to the religion. Now, most modern Christians, they got the basket. People voluntarily hand over some money. Right. It's supposed to go to running the church. It's supposed to go to helping poor people and piety and that sort of thing. But some religions require you to give up 10% of your household income to the church. And traditional Christianity was the same way as well. So those family members not mentioning it. Oh, no, there's no tithe. Well, I looked into it. There's a tithe. You're giving them money.
Of course.
And you're giving them your time. And if you specialize in anything like videos, pictures, or anything like that, they want to capitalize on your already pre-existing knowledge. So things kind of get a little bit weirder. Now, I never thought of this family member as being like a person of Walmart. You know, you people of Walmart, you go there and there's the absolute weirdest of the weird, just flying their freak flag and hey, good for them. Do your thing. You're at Walmart. That's where those things are kind of allowed in that. And
Absolutely. I remember that website. I used to go there and check out all the people. Always good times, man. People watching is one of my favorite things to do.
Well, this family member became a person of Walmart. So their group started going to local Walmarts and local stores outside the store without a permit or anything. And they were preaching to people and trying to convert people. But here's the thing. They were doing on the spot exorcisms.
Jesus. Like, what does that mean?
I'm not sure. I never asked more what that meant. I'm assuming that they're probably praying. I'm assuming they're probably doing the whole, like, probably putting a cross on them or something like that. Right. But whatever it was, they're like, this family member's banned from Walmart now. Cannot go back. They've been issued an official trespass order from corporate. Them and their group are not allowed to go back to this. And I think that's spread to other sort of organizations.
Oh yeah.
And, or other stores and that sort of thing. But they would actually bring a pickup truck, fill the back of the pickup truck with water so they could do on the spot baptisms of people. Imagine being baptized in a Ford F-150 or whatever truck of your fancy,
right,
in Walmart parking lot at 2:00 in the afternoon. Some groups dunking you in there and they're chanting and screaming and like, it still blows me away that actually happens. And but it gets, of course, the story doesn't end there. So now, like all modern offshoots of major religions, it's about control. And because I don't necessarily buy into this group, this family member, who is a very close family member, has slowly been less and less in my life and more involved with this group. The worst part is it's spread now. Now they're getting into QAnon. That's a new thing they're getting into now.
What does that mean?
That it's a big sort of thing that's in the States right now. Conspiracy theorists that believe that there's a group of satanic pedophile worshipers that are running the U.S. government, and that Donald Trump and a whole bunch of other people there are going to be saving the United States from this evil pedophile cabal. And look, it's not a conspiracy theory podcast, so we won't get too far into that. I will say, like anything else, sometimes you get things right. Sometimes they get them wildly not right. So,
absolutely.
But they're into that sort of thing now. Now they're, they've turned heavy conservative, and that's fine. Whatever, that's their thing. And again, I'm not judging, but it's interesting to see the paradigm shift of this person who is a very close family member and how they've gone from kind of a sociable, logical person into someone that's so devoted to this group and their ideology and their beliefs. And I just worry that they're going to end up taking all this person's money, number one. And I'm worried that this probably isn't good for that person's mental health overall, because whatever it is that they're looking for to fill that void, I don't know if this group is necessarily going to do that for them in the long run. Like many cults, in the long run, unless they keep coming out with new and new inventive ways to keep people engaged and under control, people slowly start to branch off, or they realize the gig and then they're out. And Scientology is big for this one, but Scientology's at a different level. I mean, I know they're kind of in the background now, but I mean, they were making people disappear, and they were putting people in high ranking positions in the government to report intel. Like they were a very, very advanced cult religion. But yeah, so that's sort of the story overall. Just Yeah.
I definitely get the cult vibe from them. You're talking about money for one. If any organization is making you pay a certain amount of money, that's a cult, man. Because I grew up with the church. All donations, you don't have to pay. They might look at you funny if you don't give them anything, but it's still voluntary. So once that they say you give us 10% or whatever the number that they come up with is, that to me is a cult. And then you're talking about how their personality has changed altogether. That's signs of a cult. I know people who go to church and they're still the same person. Some people might be a little bit more goody-goody or maybe a little bit more judgmental in certain ways, but you can still know the person is there. So once that starts happening, that's a cult, because they're obviously fucking with that dude's mind, and they're probably telling him that if you don't conform, or people that you love don't conform, you got to push them away. And that's not what church is supposed to be. That's what cults do. So definitely a cult, and that's definitely fucking with his mental health. And they're taking his money already. So that's crazy.
Well, I think they're taking his money. He's never said it, but I believe they're taking his money based on kind of what I've seen and what I've heard about this group. I think that they kind of make it seem like it's voluntary, but it's not really voluntary when there's a lot of group conformity and a group pressures. I mean, I'm looking at their website right now, and the Bible says we're under the wrath of God, not because God's the problem, but because we are, because we've sinned. But they have a solution for you. Don't worry. They have a solution.
and then you're talking about them trying to do fucking exorcisms and baptisms in Walmart parking lots. Now, listen, I've seen some crazy things in retail stores. I used to work loss prevention for a decade in like Kmart's and stuff like that. I have never seen that. And I can promise you a real church won't do that, because you have to do certain things to be baptized. It's just not, oh, you're a sinner, here's some water for you. You have to do certain things to earn that spot to get baptized in legit sanctioned churches. And I can't really attest to exorcisms, as I did not grow up Catholic, but I'm sure it's the same way too. It's just not, oh, you're evil, here's an exorcism for you. There's more to it than just saying bullshit words at your face. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, they're, and the thing too is the group is they're anti-LGBT. They think that that's just another form of demonic possession that needs to be cast out from the body. They've recently come out, they're anti-maskers as well. And again, I'm not going to get into that debate right now, because there's a lot of stuff, but it seems that they're taking more of a stance that kind of goes to the extreme on things.
Right.
They have movies that they have people watch. There's all sorts of stuff. They're very heavily involved in North America, Western countries. They're huge in. They're starting to get more involved in some other countries. Their big thing is they have these things called Kickstarters. And I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it looks like it's some type of, just like in that Simpsons episode when they join the cult, where everyone shows up to learn more information. But if you go to leave, you're free to leave, but group conformity will kind of keep you there, type thing.
Right.
Same thing they do in Vegas. When you go to Vegas and they have those people that want you to go sit in those seminars for free tickets to different events and stuff like that. Yeah. Like, they're just relying on group conformity. And like right here, I got an article pulled up, and it's someone that's talking now. It's another religious person talking about the false tenets of the Last Reformation's church. But if you go into the comments section afterwards, it is just like, it's just people there spamming videos saying, no, you've got it wrong. Here, let us show you. We can show you. It's all misunderstanding. I was a skeptic before, but I examined the teachings through the movement. They call it the Pioneer School, and it's all biblical and it's all proper. Let's see. Some people saying, yes, it's a money racket, and other people underneath saying, no, it's we've been healed by Jesus Christ. And yeah, like, you go online and you look up stuff, and you really start to kind of look up stuff. You'll find cracks in the veneer. Now, this is all mostly new stuff. This story I'm telling you happened a few years ago.
Okay.
And when I first heard about this, well, when I first had the experience and I first heard about this group, I could find almost nothing on them. There's an article by a group called Cult Watch. There was an article about the group on there, but other than that, you had to really start going past the first couple of pages of Google. So they understand search engine optimization.
That makes sense.
That's one.
Yep.
They're heavily involved in social media. Their YouTube is very heavy. People that believe, they post videos all the time. They promote them. It's a big echo chamber that, like anything else, starts to aggregate itself out into the general world. And yeah, I don't know if this family member is ever going to leave or whatnot. I just think that, paranormal wise, I don't think there's anything paranormal there. I just think it was a group of people that have become under the sway and influence of an organization and a group.
It's easily influenced, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it sounds like to me, man. It sounds just like, obvious. I've read their website too, and I saw a lot of Kickstarters. And my first thought when I saw the Kickstarter was like, they're trying to raise money to do a certain thing, and that's one way to get money. And that's what I think of when I hear the word Kickstarter these days. And obviously, it's about money, and that's what they're doing. I'd almost guarantee you that the reason that your relative is kind of pushing you away or kind of going further away is because they're putting that shit in his brain, saying that if they don't conform, you can't be around them. Kind of like your mom and dad saying, "Oh, he's a bad kid, you can't hang out with him." That kind of mindset.
Yeah, right on their website. We want Christianity to go back to the New Testament and the life we read about in the book of Acts. We need to go out and preach the gospel, heal the sick, cast out demons, and be led by the Holy Spirit as we read there. It's time we start obeying Jesus' words and make disciples of all nations.
All right. Well, the axe part is concerning. That's kind of a coincidence there. I have nothing to do with the Last Reformation, but yeah, that's pretty crazy, man. That's definitely a cult. It sounds like they're on their rise. I mean, they're still young. What is that math? 9 years now. That's a pretty young time. And now there is a lot of stuff on the internet, but it's all positive. Like you told me off air, it is really hard to find negative things outside of just, oh, it's a scam. But, it sounds like it's more than just a scam. It's beyond that. And people are probably getting hurt one way or another, whether it be mentally, like you mentioned about your relative possibly, financially, obviously, is going to be in there. And, I know cults do other weird things as well. So it's definitely not good.
I don't know. Do you have any questions based on the story or anything? Or?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. How long ago did you first come in contact? Like when you were at that party with the beer and you were watching that shit go down, like the phone cancer incident. How long, like what year was that, do you think?
About 3 years ago.
Okay. So that's still pretty recent. I would say I haven't been around people talking in tongues since I was a little kid. And I'm a little envious that I didn't have a beard in my hand like you did for that story. So at least you had that. So what was the end result with that story? Like, so, the pastor guy was screaming into the phone and then they told her to take vitamin C. Did she, like, what happened? What happened next? Was it just like, oh, that's what we do here? Like, how did you go on from that incident at that same venue?
Well, so after they had their intervention with that person on the phone and then casting out of demons of cancer and tongues and all that insanity, they just ended the conversation with the person. They wished her good luck and that, and they would talk to her later, and she still said that she felt pain and all that sort of thing, but she said she felt a warming sensation in the area, which they said was evidence that their healing was working.
Or it's evidence that people generate heat. When they're all standing around you screaming, it's going to get a little sweaty in that area. But, and that's another mindset thing too. They're going to tell you what to feel and think, and your body and your brain will play tricks on you to do that. I wonder if she still had her cancer like now, if that was 3 years ago. I wonder how she's doing now in 2020.
I'm not too sure. And frankly, I wouldn't feel comfortable enough asking that family member about it. And I hope if this family member does end up listening to this, they know that I still love them and that it's nothing personal. To me, it's a crazy story. It's an experience that I had that unsettled me. But if that's what they want to believe in and that's how they want to live their life, that it's no judgment from me. It's just my personal belief. So they're free to live their life. Believe me, I've met some really messed up people over the years. And as much as that was a weird experience, it was definitely not the worst experience. It was not the most messed up experience that I've ever had. Last episode, we talked a bit about where I worked before. So I have a little bit of experience with odd people and that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean working in a prison, you're definitely going to see some folks.
Yeah. What I will say afterwards is that they wanted to explain why, we talk in tongues. It's ancient. It goes back to the book, the church has gotten away from that, but it's perfectly natural. Like they had explanations for everything. I just agreed with them and said, oh yeah, that's fine. Again, who am I, number one, to question their beliefs? Because what they believe is their business. I'm a guest there. And normally I would have just walked out, but I have respect for that family member. So I'm going to stay there and kind of hear them out, I guess. And yeah, it was just, they wanted to talk, different passages. What was the passage they wanted to talk to me about? It was the one about, oh man, now I'm going really far back in time.
Oh, I understand completely. I barely remember last week. So absolutely.
It was the one about the guy who he had a bunch of kids and all of his kids ended up dead and he still loved God and he didn't blame God for it.
Oh yeah, I know you're talking about. Like, wasn't he supposed to murder one of his kids, but then like God told him not to at the very end or something?
No, that was another guy. This one was a different one. He had a wife who had a whole bunch of kids and then disease and calamity. Basically, he was being tested and he passed all the tests. Kids were all dead, but he passed all the tests. So
I gotcha.
Good to go, I guess. And they were trying to talk to me about that and wanted to know my thoughts on it, which was basically, I just said it was just a parable that life is suffering and you have to find meaning through suffering and continue on with your life, no matter how much, whatever life throws at you. Just kind of more of a logical explanation than a metaphysical one.
Yep, absolutely. And that's kind of how I feel about most of the Bible. Again, I've grown up in a church and I've heard a lot of these stories. I remember that story. I just don't remember the name of it. But yeah, and like you look at it as that probably didn't actually happen verbatim, but you use those as lessons and like metaphors to live by, right? That's how logical people, I think, would take that into account.
And these days, when we think of someone having 6, 7 kids and all their kids die, we think it's a terrible tragedy. But back before modern medicine and modern society, people did try to have as many kids as they could because it was most likely only 1 or 2 would survive overall.
That's a good point. Absolutely.
So they had a different view on death, a different view on morality and mortality in general when it came to the concept of having children and what children meant in your life. And when everyone's kids, died of some form of disease that they didn't even know at the time what it was, that kind of became just a natural part of life, where now death is almost unnatural in our life.
That's a good point. Absolutely. So with the Last Reformation, what is your goal, or what do you want to have happen with getting your story out there? Like what do you want the general population to know about this group?
I think just know about them. Just know that they are a growing group. Just know that just to be careful. I think if you have a family member or someone you care about, or even someone in your workplace that starts talking about this sort of thing, especially if they mention the Last Reformation, just be careful, because a very big tenet of their organization is recruitment. Numbers. They want the numbers. Just remember, look at everything through a critical eye. If it doesn't seem to pass the sniff test for you, don't ignore your gut feelings on things, especially when it comes to groups like that. If it doesn't seem right, just separate yourself from something like that as quickly as possible. What I would like to see is like Scientology. Over the years, they've had whistleblowers that have come out and they've done movements and they've done whole exposés on that. And now because of all that stuff, Scientology isn't really a big thing anymore. It's not big like it used to be.
Right. It's kind of laughed at, it seems like, these days. Like, you bring up Scientology and people make fun of it. Whereas, it's not really taken seriously anymore, it seems like.
I think South Park helped with that. I think that Anonymous, the internet group Anonymous, when they did their big takedowns of Scientology, really helped with that. I just hope that one day someone on the inside blows the whistle and we can kind of crack the veneer a little bit and like the Wizard of Oz, get a peek behind the curtain to see what's really going on in an organization like that. Because like many of those small time religious organizations, I think that it takes people that are in a vulnerable mental state. Maybe something's gone on in their life that isn't the best or whatever reason. And they exploit that and they milk people of their money, their time, their energy. And I would just, if people are interested, if cults are kind of someone's thing, check them out, understand a little bit more about them, and just realize that you can draw tenets from them all the way back to Jonestown to all sorts of other cults. You can see similarities, very clear similarities.
Yep, that's absolutely true from what I've heard here. I'm going to kind of keep looking into it. And that's my biggest problem, is people being taken advantage of when they're in a vulnerable state. It drives me insane. So I appreciate you taking the time, Russell, to hang out with me today and to tell me that story, man.
Yeah, I know it's probably not the spookiest story you've ever heard, but sometimes reality that we can see and feel around us can be that much more strange.
Absolutely. I can tell you, I'd rather take on a bunch of ghosts in a house than a bunch of cult-minded people. So there, you know what I mean?
Definitely will agree with that.
All right, man. So tell me where we can find your show. Where do we find you? And just tell us about Coffee Breath Conversations here.
So I have a small podcast I started just before the pandemic really hit. And I was kind of just interviewing small businesses and just talking people. I think normal people, everyday people, too many celebrities are on there and they're just talking about themselves all the time and how amazing they are. And it's so annoying and boring and privileged in that. And so I just had normal people on telling me about interesting stories. And then after the pandemic hit, things started to turn where I was having business owners on that were talking about how they've adapted to the pandemic. And then things on my podcast have kind of taken another turn where I've had a few people on now that are kind of more conspiracy theory minded. And what's really scary is I go back to March, April, May, and I listen to some of those episodes where I have guests telling me they're going to have vaccine passports. They're going to shut everything down. They're going to start arresting people and putting people in jail. Yeah. And I kind of said, okay, well, that's interesting. Maybe probably not. And now it's happening. And I'm like,
that's fair.
Was it really a conspiracy? I don't know.
That's a good point. It's getting kind of wild out there. So it's definitely something to pay attention to.
And yeah, and as much as I don't want to be a conspiracy theory podcast, I've gotten the most views. I've gotten the most shares. I've gotten the most kind of interest since I've had those guests on. So it shows that people are looking for information and outside of what they're hearing from the rest of the media sources out there. So that's kind of where it's gone. I'm trying to bring it back to just having people on there talking about their everyday lives and interesting stories and that. But yeah, if you want to hear some of my earlier stuff, just stories about everyday people, give her a listen. If you're more conspiracy minded, well, believe me, my latest episodes have certainly gone into that.
Awesome. So it sounds like there's something there for just about everybody, which makes a good podcast great, if that makes sense. So
well, I think so, definitely. And I want to thank you again for having me on for a second episode. I listened to your work and I try to promote your work. I think it's you have some really interesting people on your show, some interesting guests, and whenever I get the chance, people are talking, they want to hear a good ghost story. I said, well, you got to check out Ben and Paranormal Axetivities because he's got the guests on there.
Heck yeah, man! I appreciate all of that. I do see you on Twitter, man. I definitely appreciate all of the listens and appreciate all of the shout outs, man. You're awesome. Thank you so much for watching and checking out the show, man.
No, it's my pleasure, and I thank you again for having me on for a second episode.
Yep, absolutely. Anytime. I'd love to have you back down the road, man. So you have a great evening, and I did enjoy your stories, and hopefully we're both safe after this episode airs. We'll see what happens.
Yes, I just want to say now I'm of sound mind, and I have no suicidal intentions or anything like that.
That's a perfect disclaimer. All righty. Stay safe out there in the COVID and Last Reformation world, brother.
You too. Take care.
So yeah, huge thanks again to Russell for taking the time tonight and hanging out with me here at Paranormal Axetivities. If you are interested in more, please go to his podcast, Coffee Breath Conversations. You can find him pretty much everywhere, along with his Twitter address at CoffeeBreathCO1. And he is more than glad to answer any questions you may have about the Last Reformation. And real quick, I just want to say one more time, I am not trying to bash religion whatsoever. I grew up in a church. I definitely have my own personal religious beliefs. So it's just a genuine conversation about the Last Reformation, whether or not it is a cult and that kind of stuff. So with all that being said, one more thing I need to say here before I wrap up. You may have noticed that Paranormal Axetivities is now part of The Buzz, and you can find The Buzz at the all your social media platforms, WTBdotcom, all of your sports, paranormal, all of other kind of podcasts that we have will be found right there. So check out The Buzz. And that's going to go ahead and wrap up this episode of Paranormal Axetivities. Please follow my Patreon page, follow my merchandise, follow my social medias, all of the good stuff. And at the end of the day, guys, let's just keep learning about the paranormal together.